Hey guys, Petrik here. Before I get to the main point of this video, I want to say thank you first because this channel has reached almost 3,000 subscribers, which is pretty crazy because this channel is only 2 months old. I started this channel in 1st of September and now it's the mid of November, and yeah, it has been rising much faster than I expected, and I'm truly thankful for you guys. As for this video, it will be my favorite ongoing series. This includes all genre, though there is only one sci-fi in it. I'm currently caught in the middle of 82 unfinished series. Yeah, that number is crazy. But to be honest, I don't actually mind reading unfinished series. If a series already caught my attention, I will probably read it. I don't really care about the status of its completion. That's why I'm caught in so many unfinished series. When the next book comes out, I'll just read with the previous book, or maybe hopefully the author will include a recap of the previous book. Sometimes they do that, and I'm truly thankful for those authors who do that. As for the series included in this list, I have only one rule, and it is that I've read at least 2 books in the series. Unless it's a duology, but there is no duology in this list. If I've read only 1 book in the series so far, it probably won't appear in this list. So yeah, let's get started. This is my top 15 ongoing series. At number 15, we have first the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher. I'm finally caught up with reading everything published in this series, and I'm truly astounded by how much I enjoyed it. When I first started this series, I didn't expect that I would enjoy it this much, because urban fantasy with contemporary setting rarely clicked for me. And in the first 3 books of the Dresden Files, they indeed didn't really click. They were still fun, but I still haven't seen the specialty and why everyone are so obsessed with this series. But thankfully, the fans, all of the fans, have pretty much mentioned to me that you have to be patient with this series, that you have to give it a try until at least the 4th book. And yeah, they were right. They were completely right. I rated pretty much everything in the series from the 4th book until the latest one, the 17th book, Battleground. 4 stars and above. None of the books received anything below 4 stars ever since the 4th book. It is that consistent in the quality. So many great characters. And yeah, I love the series and I'm joining the waiting game for the next one. Hopefully it won't be too long. At number 14, we have War for the Rose-Throne Quartet by Peter McLean. Currently 2 books are out. The first book is Priest of Bones, the second book is Priest of Lies, and the 3rd book will come out next year. It's titled Priest of Gallows. It is an incredible series. This is a grimdark gangster fantasy series, and I think the best comparison to describe this series is that if you love a gangster movie like The Godfather, or maybe the TV show Peaky Blinder, this one in particular, if you love the Peaky Blinder, you will have to check this one out. Admittedly, I'm not too much of a fan of the TV series Peaky Blinder, but I think Peter McLean did an amazing job, even though the series felt so inspired by it. The story that he tells in this series and the characterizations were truly stunning. And I think Peter McLean has some of the most distinctive narrative voice in fantasy. The main character, Thomas Petty, there is something about the voice in his character. The story is told from his perspective in first-person point of view. There's something about his narrative voice that really sticks. When I'm reading the book, it's like truly he's talking to me. Seriously, it's so good, so good. I cannot wait for the 3rd book to come out next year. At number 13 spot is The Burning by Evan Winter. This is an African-inspired fantasy, and I have talked about this plenty of times, but to make it short, pretty much if you love Joe Abercrombie's actions and Pierce Brown's pacing in Rising Saga, I think you will love this one. The characterizations of Thor and the revenge story that Winter tries to do with this series is truly incredible. I love this so much, and I think Evan Winter will become a big name in the future. I'm quite sure of it based on the 2 books that I've read so far. I'm not sure whether the 3rd book will come out next year or not. Hopefully it is. But yeah, I'm very looking forward to it, and I will have a video conversation with Evan Winter soon in the future. I haven't set the date yet, but yeah, look forward to it. At the 12th spot is Manifest Delusions by Michael Fletcher. This is one of the finest and the most filthiest grimdark fantasy to ever exist in novels. Seriously, sometimes I actually wonder why I even love this series. But I can't deny it, it's so good, it's imaginative. The magic system that's inspired by mental illness was truly wow. I mean, that's so original. Fletcher has written a lot of books after Manifest Delusions, and currently the last book is still missing. it hasn't been published, but I still think this is still his best work so far. Even though he has written a lot of great books, but yeah, Manifest Delusions is special. Especially if you love grimdark, you have to give this one a try. Though, I do have to give a warning though. If you're fluent in German, I have heard that this series won't work for you because Fletcher pretty much used German for every terminology. It doesn't work. I cannot guarantee for this one because I don't speak German, but yeah, this is something for you to think about if you're fluent in German. At the 11th spot is Fungicide by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is another one that I have talked plenty of times. Robert Jackson Bennett is, as I mentioned several times, is one of my favorite authors. I love his work. He blends fantasy, sci-fi, and horror incredibly well in an urban high fantasy setting. If you love Mistborn, especially the first book by Brandon Sanderson, I think there's a good chance that you will love this one. It has great characters and the magic system is very fascinating. If I'm not mistaken, the name was scriving, and it is pretty much giving commands and action to sentient objects. For example, there's a locked door and you can give command to the door to open. Well, something like that, and Bennett has a way to use his magic system pretty cleverly. Only 2 books are out at the moment. The first book is Fungicide, the second book is Shortfall. I have no idea when the third book will come out, but knowing Robert Jackson Bennett, he will probably release it next year or the year after. At the 10th spot is The Gentleman Bastard by Scott Lynch. This is a super fun and engaging series, and it features some of the best dialogues I have ever read in novel. They made me laugh, they made me emotional, and the characters were so well written. Locke and Jean is one of the best bromance in fantasy, and the Gentleman Bastards group is one of the most compelling and easy to empathize with group in fantasy. The best way to describe this one is Ocean 11 in a fantasy setting. Although the third book didn't really click for me, otherwise this would rank even higher, I still think this is one of my favorite ongoing series, and whenever the fourth book comes out, I will be reading it day one. The 9th spot in this list is The Last War Trilogy by Mike Shackle. I've talked about this series several times in this channel, but this is pretty much like the Burning Quartet. If you love action-packed story that doesn't sacrifice its characterizations, this is one that you have to check out. I think Mike Shackle is one of the most underrated authors right now. I cannot believe how few people are reading this series. Most of the characters didn't actually start as likable characters, but I think the way these characters behave in the face of war and revolution truly felt real. The action scenes were very vivid, and the second book went into direction that I didn't expect would happen, but it became better for it. So good. Definitely check it out if you love books like, again, Abercrombie. At the 8th spot is 5 Warrior Angels by Brian Lee Durfee. This is one epic fantasy series. It was first originally planned to be a 5-book series, but recently Durfee has confirmed that it will be 3 books long. Currently 2 books are out. The first book is The Forgetting Moon, the second book is The Blackest Heart, and the third book is The Lonesome Crown. This is amazing, y'all. They're massive and it features a lot of characters. And I think, again, this is one of the most underrated fantasy series. Brian Lee Durfee combines grimdark and heroic fantasy amazingly well in this series. A lot of people has mentioned that prophecies in fantasy now doesn't work. I highly disagree with that. It could still work, it just depends on the execution, and I think what Brian Lee Durfee doing with the prophecies in this series are truly incredible. One of the arguments against prophecy that's constantly being thrown out is that prophecies make the stories predictable, but this is not the case with the 5 Warrior Angels. Prophecies actually make the story much more unpredictable. I still have no idea where the series will go from here, and I cannot wait for it. Brian has mentioned that the third book will be twice the size of Forgetting Moon. That means the third book, which is the final book, will be at least 400,000 words. As Brian himself said, he has decided to Sandersonize it. And look at the cover art. It's done by one of my favorite artists, Richard Anderson. They're gorgeous. At the 7th spot is the Age of Mantas trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. This is his newest trilogy. Only 2 books are out right now. The first book is A Little Hatred, the second book is Trouble with Peace, and the third book is The Wisdom of Crowds. It will come out next year on September. It's honestly quite insane that with so many books being put out by Abercrombie, I think he has written like 11 books now, 11 or 12 books. And although I haven't read Shattered Sea, everything in the First Law series is just magnificent. In the Age of Mantas trilogy, most of the characters featured are younger characters compared to the First Law trilogy. I think they still retain Abercrombie's final skill as a storyteller. I'm not kidding. I love them all. As I've constantly mentioned before, Abercrombie is my favorite grimdark fantasy writer right now. And the First Law series as a whole, including the First Law Trilogy, the Standalone Trilogy, and the Age of Mantas Trilogy, is my #1 favorite grimdark fantasy novels as a series. And I think there is no sign of Abercrombie stopping anytime soon. He's truly damn good at this business. And at the 6th spot is the series that inspired Joe Abercrombie, A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin. It's quite hard to talk about A Song of Ice and Fire now. Usually readers remember two things. First, the season 8 of Game of Thrones, which, as we all probably know by now, is viscerally mixed received or negative. And the second one is the unfinished state of the series. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I don't mind unfinished series, and A Song of Ice and Fire probably will never be finished. I do believe that The Winds of Winter will come out one day, but A Dream of Spring is a dream. The sooner you think of it that way, the better you will feel for it. That's in my opinion. But as for the quality of the series itself, we have to remember one thing, that George R. Martin has inspired so many amazing books. There's so many amazing modern fantasy works right now that's inspired by A Song of Ice and Fire. That's something that's quite undeniable in my opinion. And well, here's the thing about A Song of Ice and Fire. I absolutely love the first 3 books. I'm not kidding. Game of Thrones, Clash of Kings, and A Storm of Swords, especially A Storm of Swords, are phenomenal. I truly believe that the first 3 books in A Song of Ice and Fire are some of the greatest books in the entire fantasy genre. I've read every book in A Song of Ice and Fire, and to be honest, if I were to rate the series only based on Game of Thrones, A Clash of Kings, and A Storm of Swords, the ranking for this series would definitely go even higher. But admittedly, the 4th and the 5th book didn't work for me. I'm not too sure whether that's because I binge read the series, maybe I needed a break between books, or maybe it's just the format. I think Martin's decision in the point of view characters for book 4 and book 5 ended up being quite disappointing. I've heard from many fans of the series that still love the entire series so far, and they said to me that when I reread the series, eventually I will. I should use the A Feast with Dragons reading guide. A Feast with Dragons pretty much entails you to read A Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons together at the same time in a chronological fashion instead of based on locations. And thinking about it, I think that would actually work. And yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to doing that. But if possible, I want to wait until Winds of Winter comes out first before I reread the entire series from the beginning. But who knows? I have missed Westeros so much. The brutal, unflinching world and the merciless fate that Martin bestowed towards the characters, especially the good characters, definitely leaves a mark on me. And yeah, I miss the intricate world building. Who knows, I might reread the series sooner than I thought, even if the 6th book hasn't come out yet. At the #5 spot is Greenbone Saga by Fonda. The first book is Jade City, the second book is Jade War, and the third book is Jade Legacy, that will come out next year. I absolutely love this series so much. Jade War is one of the greatest sequels that I've ever read. And this is an urban high fantasy with extremely well written characters, and when I was reading the book, it truly felt like I was in there. The motivation of the characters were truly well written. The close quarter combat that Lee portrayed in her series are truly destructive and emotionally palpable. I think Fonda Lee has a special talent in building the tension within every scene, and the explosion of that tension are truly breathtaking. Based on what I've read so far, I believe that Jade Legacy will establish this as one of the best trilogy of all time. At the #4 spot is The Band by Nicholas Eames. The first book is Kings of the Wild, the second book is Bloody Rose, and the third book is Outlaw Empire. It hasn't been released yet. I'm not sure whether it will come out next year. I think it will be next year or the year after. But either way, this is a standalone trilogy. There is no cliffhanger, and they are some of the greatest books in the fantasy. I've mentioned it in my reviews of Kings of the Wild. I'm sure that Nicholas Eames' names will be big, and as time goes by, I'm sure that Nicholas Eames will be even more remembered as one of the greatest fantasy writer. The Kings of the Wild was so fun, hilarious. I don't even like comedic fantasy, but I think Nicholas Eames has nailed the balance in serious mood and hilarious tone. The actions were good, and the second book is more epic and serious in tone, but I love them both. They're special, and the music and games Easter eggs that Eames included, especially being a Final Fantasy fans as well, truly stick with me. They made me smile, and every time I spot something like the shadow of the Colossus in the Bloody Rose, it always gave me an aha moment, you know. And please, if you haven't read the pen by now, do give them a try. At the number 3 spot is Rising Saga by Pierce Brown. This is the only sci-fi series on this list, and it is also my number 1 favorite sci-fi series of all time. Pierce Brown is truly a fantastic writer. The writing is so beautiful and every moment is impactful. The story is unpredictable. There were many moments that made me emotional, made me skip a heartbeat, and there are so many great characters in this series. Darrow and Severo is definitely one of my favorite duo out of all books in every genre. I think the development of their relationship were very realistic and superbly written. Rising Saga was originally a trilogy, and it has been extended to 6 books, and the final book I think will come out either next year or the year after. The series did start a bit like Hunger Games, and it moves into military sci-fi space opera in the 2nd book and so on. And the 5th book, Dark Age, is one of the darkest novel I've ever read, probably the darkest. It's so bleak, brutal, and some aspect of the book didn't really click for me, but I think it mostly stemmed from the fact that I haven't read the previous books for a very long time. I have a good feeling on reread from the start that Dark Age will work better for me. Yeah, definitely give this series a try. Even if you're a fantasy reader, I still think this is worth taking a look. I mean, I am mostly a fantasy reader, and look how high this series is on my list. And also one more thing, this is a very important series for me because without this series, I wouldn't have met my current fiancé right now. And yeah, I think thinking about it, that's probably why I'm a bit biased about this series. At the 2nd spot, and this will probably anger some readers, hopefully not, is the Kingkiller Chronicle by Petrik Rothfuss. The 1st book is The Name of the Wind, the 2nd book is The Wise Man's Fear, and then there is a novella called The Slow Regard of Silent Things, and the 3rd book is The Doors of Stone, which probably will never come out, and the sooner you come to terms with that, the better. I mean, if it comes out, I will be super happy, but I don't think you should have hopes for it, especially because the editor has mentioned that she hasn't read a single word of Doors of Stone in 6 years. That's honestly very disheartening, and I understand that you're very frustrated. But for the series itself, I'm more grateful that I have read this series rather than not. I consider Rothfuss' prose to be one of the best in the genre, maybe even the best, just prose-wise. His description on emotions, on scenes, on calmness, on how we cope with feelings about love, about loss, about solitude, everything, and especially music, everything just clicked with me in a way that I didn't think was going to be possible. And to make things even better, this series somehow gets even better on reread. I've read everything in this series twice, except The Wise Man's Fear, and knowing that The Wise Man's Fear will probably have a 10th anniversary edition comes out next year, I will reread the entire series again. For me, even in its unfinished state, I'm still very grateful of this series. And to be honest, this is still pretty tame compared to some of the series I'm caught into, like the manga Berserk by Kentaro Miura. It's been 31 years and it's not finished yet. Probably will never be finished too. And again, I'm more grateful that I've read this series rather than not. And we finally arrive at the number 1 spot, and surprising absolutely no one, this is the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. The Stormlight Archive is epic fantasy at its best. It is a 10-book series divided into 2 sequences of 5 books, and currently 4 books are out. Yeah, Freedom of War just came out, and I'm reading it right now. But yeah, the 1st book is The Way of Kings, the 2nd book is Words of Radiance, the 3rd book is Oathbringer, and there's a novella called Age Dancer and Dawn Shard, and yeah, the 4th book, Freedom of War. I have pretty much rated everything in this series as a masterpiece, except the novellas. But The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer, I would give them all 6 out of 5 stars if I could. And I'm sure that based on what I've read so far in Rhythm of War, I think it will follow the notion. Brandon Sanderson is one of the most prolific and one of the most highly praised authors in the genre right now, and it is for many good reasons. His writing output is inhuman, he always keeps in touch with his readers, and I truly appreciate that his writing is accessible epic fantasy. I personally think that Brandon Sanderson's writing is incredibly well done. It is accessible, it is simple, and it is very easy to read. And his accessible writing plays a lot of factor into why he's so popular. One thing that I'm really grateful about Sanderson's writing is that he made a lot of fantasy readers could appreciate fantasy. A good example of this would be my little brother. He doesn't like reading fantasy books. He said it's too complicated, the writing is too complex. And I told him, you know what, you should try reading Brandon Sanderson's book. I gave him Emperor Soul. It blew his mind away. Emperor Soul was only 100 pages long. And now imagine that quality of writing in the Stormlight Archives for something so epic and grand in its scope, and everyone can appreciate. I love that. Just look at the hype surrounding Rhythm of War. So many people are talking about it, and it felt good to be in its fandom right now. Sure, there's some odd fanatic out there, but I think as a whole, I'm very grateful for what Sanderson's done with Stormlight Archives and pretty much all of his books. Every time I read a Brandon Sanderson books, I always get emotional. I love this series so much, and it is my #1 favorite ongoing series, and probably will stay that way for a very long time. And now I'm going to end this video because I want to read Rhythm of War. That's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, thank you so much for your support. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I cannot believe that almost 3,000 of you are subscribed to me now. I'm truly grateful, and although I keep repeating this, I am. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely day, and let me know what's your favorite ongoing series right now. Bye!